And if he needs money, like a giant magnet comes out of the top of it, and it just pulls dollars out of everybody in the town's pockets. That is what a CBDC is, right? And that's really all it is.
Edward Snowden says governments see crypto as an evolving threat. I think governments correctly perceive an evolving threat to traditional tools which they've grown accustomed to, Snowden said, in terms of an ability to impose regulation upon private lives and, more broadly, private trade. Edward Joseph Snowden is an American former computer intelligence consultant who leaked highly classified information from the National Security Agency in 2013 when he was an employee and subcontractor.
One of the things that I think is interesting is you look back in the sort of pre-Freedom of the Press Foundation world and why it was created. And it was because there was a financial blockade being run against WikiLeaks, and they were being cut off from Visa and MasterCard. And what we saw were basically financial sanctions being applied against non-governmental organizations, and in this case, a press organization, for really, I think, the first time in modern history. So this was before I joined, but people were going, can we create some kind of charitable structure that can help avoid setting this precedent where government can get in the way of people's political giving? Now, obviously, it has developed beyond that. We create the secure drop software that's used by all of the most important newsrooms in the world for protected communications with their most sensitive sources. And it's kind of amazing. We can't talk about the successes broadly because the newsrooms don't want to put their people at risk. But stories that have changed history have come through this software. And so that's an amazing thing. We are trying to look at the world as it is. And where we see constraints being applied between the people and the press, right? And basically relax those constraints, create a more free and open society where people can hear the stories that they need and get the information that they need in order to realize a better world. I mean, we see this unfortunately happening in the world more and more. There's this question that we all have to ask ourselves. What is the proper role of government in a free and open society? And then we have to look at the role that the government actually plays in the societies that we live in. And then we need to go, are we doing everything we can in order to make the current facts of our reality as they exist today move in the direction of the ideal of what they could and should be? Now, when you sort of wind back the clock to that sort of financial blockade against WikiLeaks, and it's important for people to remember at the time, like a lot of people controversialize WikiLeaks today. But back in 2010, we're talking about the Iraq and Afghanistan war logs, Guantanamo Bay journals, where they were talking about the detainment of people sort of indefinitely. They didn't have access to courts. There were real violations of human rights that were exposed as a result of these disclosures. And it was, they were winning awards from press organizations around the world. But there was a government that obviously resisted this. They felt they were made uncomfortable by it. And so they went, what can we do to stop this, right? And they went, well, if the people who work for WikiLeaks can no longer feed themselves, they might have to find something else to do. Now, the world has really iterated on that design. And, we moved from 2010 to then 2013 era with myself. And I'm going, I wasn't trying to make this completely anonymous. Bitcoin is not a sort of anonymous ledger. It is a truly public ledger, and those things are always out there. There are indelible traces of financial flows. And I knew actually these things could be sort of tied back to me because I wasn't going to enormous lengths to hide them. What I was doing was I was just trying to win time and distance in order to coordinate with the journalists before the moment when I assumed inevitably I would be arrested and sort of thrown in the dark hole and no one would ever hear from me again. The amazing thing is I was able to win enough time and distance that we were able to meet in person. We were able to get the story out. And at the end of the day, we actually succeeded. and we changed the public understanding of what was actually happening. And yeah, cryptocurrency did play a small role in that. There are government types, that would probably hiss at that, which is why I didn't talk about this until years after it happened, when now crypto's already taken over the world. I mean, the risk is very easy to illustrate. If you remember cartoons, like the DuckTales Scrooge McDuck, there's one guy who's got a giant vault full of coins and dollar bills and things like that. Um, and if he needs money, like a giant magnet comes out of the top of it and it just pulls dollars out of everybody in the town's pockets. That is what a CBDC is, right? And that's really all it is. What I mean by a crypto fascist currency is we don't realize that we have immediately been subordinated and collectivized to the central actor in the economy. The dollar is that today in its electronic form. But the cash sort of physical legacy form of it, while it does have all of these sort of limitations that I mentioned as it enters sort of the complex financial system. When you go down to McDonald's, right, who knows, actually, McDonald's is a little too sophisticated these days. Maybe I shouldn't use that example. When you go down to the bodega, right, or the deli, and you buy a ham and cheese, the guy who presses the button on the register that's been there since 1975, and the till pops out and he puts the dollar in and gives you another dollar back, that still works regardless of what the government is interested in. As we move towards increasingly electronic versions of cash, and we are using electronics and electronic platforms and electronic accounts and centralized services, uh, those permissioning gates that I mentioned before, our freedom from permission, becomes ever more finite and ever more limited. And increasingly, we're being asked to step more through these gates. And that is a tremendous concern. I think it can. And I mean, I think it's very clear that a lot of people are already putting a lot of effort into developing it, or at least exploring it, the possibility of it. The questions that we've been discussing today really circle around um, that concept that you keep bringing up, whether it's a public institution, whether it's a private institution, somebody is intermediating our transactions. Is it right for them to be doing it? How are they doing this? Does it concern you? Does it scare you? How will it proceed? What will it look like in the future? And what if we could simply take those premises and push them to the side and go, do they need to? And we know today it's not technically necessary. We need something, some trusted layer to settle right transactions. But this can be a decentralized layer. We've proved it, right? Thanks Satoshi, for that one. And now everybody's spinning off in different directions, going, how can we sort of expand on that? How we can change that? Can we do more there? But the basic concept is established. People can have economic interactions at a distance without a central intermediary. Uh, Moving on from there, we simply have to consider what are the consequences for this, for better or worse, and do we want to embrace them or reject them?